No fun in the format. Best deck we a cop. How do you stop? Hammer time. Alright, so what's good, Spirit Squad? This is Dre. Today we're going to take a quick Spirit snapshot on how to beat Hammer Time. So I think the Hammer Time matchup is fairly even to slightly better than even, depending on how hard you want to sideboard cards against that matchup. So they can get under most of our interaction, especially when they win the die roll. So for example, if they roll out an Ornithopter or a Memnite on turn 1 along with Sigarda's aid, they can just use their turn 2 and double Colossus Hammer us for 20 damage before we can really do anything about it. So that is a thing that we need to be aware of, but other than that, we're still pretty okay. So even though they can get under our interaction, especially if like we're on the draw, we play a turn 1 Aether Vial, we think life is okay, and then life is very not okay, that's a thing. But outside of exactly that, we have a lot of great interaction for this matchup. For example, we've got some great cards in this, especially being Shacklegeist and Skyclave Apparition. So Shacklegeist, since they're basically planning to form Voltron with one big creature and swing until they get there, Shacklegeist actually has the ability to simply tap down their creature that's equipped with a thing, and we no longer have to care about that problem when it's tapped every turn. So that's a really sick thing we have access to. Also, Skyclave Apparition can either get rid of their creatures or get rid of their equipment, whatever we choose to do. So even a card like Giver of Runes doesn't completely get them out of the water, because if they like Giver of Runes, it can protect their creatures, but guess what? It doesn't protect their Colossus Hammer. So they can protect their creatures, but like their Ornithopter's a 0-2, so who cares? So those are two really good cards that we have access to help control that matchup a lot more. And on their end, we want to make sure to just look out for Colossus Hammer, for Shadow Spear, and for Sigarda's Aid, because those are going to be the cards that actually get us dead. Without the equipment, all of the smaller stuff that's going on in their deck, they have like Pure Steel Paladins, Inkmoth Nexus, Memnite, Ornithopter. Their creatures are somehow even smaller than ours. So as long as we can control that equipment, we're actually pretty good to go. So what we did here was went ahead, pulled up a quick sample match, right? And this is going to be a hand where I think we just kept 7. I don't remember. We'll find out. So let's go ahead and check that out. So we do get to be on a play, which is really nice in this matchup. And I would also like to complain about the fact that our opponent username is Ramp, and they are not playing Ramp. So we'll see right in the chat where I told him, looks at username, looks at Luris, that isn't Ramp. Our opponent lied to us. But we do get to jam out a turn 1 Aether Vial, which is pretty dope. So we do have a second land, we get to have a turn 2 of Supreme Phantom and Mausoleum Wanderer, and we're scared of what's going on here because we can just die. But we also have access to Skyclave Apparition next turn, and we know we're going to get there. So that's really nice. So let's see what happens here. So they play another land, they play a Gilded Goose, and while that's not very normal in these decks, it is definitely something that helps out a lot. It pumps up additional flyers, so they get to play not necessarily more of the Ornithopter effects, but like, I think it's actually a pretty good addition to these decks. Ooh, we also get Shacklegeist? Nice. And now because of the Shacklegeist, we actually know that we don't need to really do anything with the Skyclave Apparition. What we are going to do, though, is we're going to go ahead, put Shacklegeist into play so that we can go ahead and kind of control the way the combat's going to work. And even though they have the Gilded Geese right here, we actually want to use the Mausoleum Wanderer and make them pay 3, and that'll make them use one of the foods. If they want to also use the second food to play the Colossus Hammer they would get after paying 3 for this Steel Shaper's Gift, that would exhaust all of their mana, and we can still use Shacklegeist to tap down to Memnite if that's what they choose to do. So let's see what happens here. Oh, even better. So we're basically going to force them to do that instead. Okay, so I think that was I don't know if I like that line, but that's what we did. So we went ahead and so they just cast the cranial plating. They have a second cranial plating. They get to equip it here, which is fine. We take 7. And actually, no, I'm okay with that. Yeah, I'm just complaining. I'm okay with that. Ooh, this Drogskol Captain's nice too. So we're going to go ahead and take them down to 13. And so now this looks really good though, because like they can't use double black to transfer this cranial plating over here, so they must have drawn a Colossus Hammer for the turn, so that's what's going down over there. However, we're actually pretty fine with that if that's the play. And if we get to basically survive for like 1 or 2 turns, then they're pretty much dead. Alright, so they do have the hammer. Oh, you know what? That stinks. I just realized we didn't have a way, because Colossus Hammer makes it lose flying. But we don't have a way to vial in Skyclave and take the hammer and block this, because it'll regain flying by the time we move to blockers. So I thought that was going to be a cool thing that I could talk about for a second, but that's not applicable here. However, we are going to take 0 from that goose, so that part's pretty nice. So let's see what we draw here. And a quick little warning to them, because they are at 13. Oh, that's actually pretty decent. So that's going to get them dead. So we're just going to go ahead, Skyclave the goose, right? And we're just going to deal them 4, 8, 11, 12, 13. So that's Xaxes. And that's just a quick sample of a game in which, you know, both of us got to do our things. They actually played a bunch of mana acceleration, so they got to do their thing even faster. They started out with the turn 1 Memnite Sigarda's Aid, so they had the stuff they needed to get. Even though we had to counterspell for their Steel Shaper's Gift, they chose to just let us counter it, which, whatever, that's fine. And instead, they just played double cranial plating in a turn, and they got to 7 us. So, like, their deck did what it needed to do, but we were able to kind of get a handle on that situation, and we got to, you know, just make sure that a lot of that became really unimportant thanks to the Shacklegeist. And thanks to Shacklegeist giving us extra turns to play with, we got to, you know, draw more and deploy more threats. Like Skyclave Apparition got to take this 3rd piece of equipment that they found. We got to get rid of a key blocker so that we could deal lethal when we needed to. We got lots of power and toughness on the board, so even if they had a scenario where they were attacking with this and we didn't have, for example, the Shacklegeist, we still would have just been able to, you know, simply block their creature, and then we're still okay because they're not attacking us for lethal. So even though both decks fired on all cylinders, we got to just control the board because our interaction is really good. And as I said before, a lot of our interaction only gets better when we choose to use our sideboard and tune it for this matchup. So if you want to play cards that are a lot like Path to Exile or Pithing Needle, or even things like Ceremonious Rejection, this is another matchup in which decks like Merfolk can play Chalice of the Void out of the board, and we can do the same. We can play cards that we used to play, like Blessed Alliance, so just the mode where they sacrifice an attacking creature is really good. And even just like hilariously fringe things like Disenchants are really good. And if you're playing a Bantalist, you have access to Collector Oof and Knight of Autumn too. So don't forget all those sweet green cards that people can play in these Spirit stacks. But that's going to be our Spirit Snapshot for how to beat Hammer Time, because I do believe that we've got a lot of play in that matchup, even though they are very fast. So, as always, if you do like what you're seeing here, just make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see y'all on the next one.